The stability of a monetary system is not maintained by the transparency of its communication, but by the management of public expectations. You are told that the Federal Reserve is a neutral, data-driven arbiter of the economy, an institution that operates with clinical detachment from the political theater. The architecture of the system reveals a different truth. The Federal Reserve does not need to be transparent to be effective. It only needs to be credible enough to ensure the continued expansion of debt. There is a fundamental mismatch between the public narrative of central bank independence and the structural reality of fiscal-monetary coordination. When you watch a press conference held by Jerome Powell, you are observing a carefully curated performance designed to anchor inflation expectations. What is left undisclosed in the private deliberations of the FOMC is not a secret cabal. It is the cold, mathematical realization that the system's survival depends on the constant dilution of the currency. Cognitive tension arises when we realize that the dual mandate, maximum employment and price stability, is often a structural impossibility in a debt-based system. To maintain employment, the system requires liquidity expansion. To maintain price stability, it requires contraction. The private reality of central banking is the constant management of this contradiction. The ultimate casualty is always the purchasing power of the individual. The system does not need to confiscate your wealth through direct taxation or physical seizure. It only needs to ensure that the rate of monetary expansion remains slightly higher than your ability to preserve capital. This is the invisible filter through which all economic activity must pass, a structural design that prioritizes the solvency of the state over the savings of the citizen. To understand why central banks operate behind closed doors, we must analyze the incentive structures that govern their behavior. The Federal Reserve acts as the lender of last resort, a mechanism designed to prevent systemic collapse by providing liquidity when the private market refuses to do so. While this is framed as a public service, the primary beneficiaries are the tier one financial institutions that sit closest to the monetary spigot. This is the Cantillon Effect. Those who receive newly created money first, banks and government contractors, can purchase assets at current prices before the inflationary wave ripples through the broader economy. By the time the liquidity reaches you, the purchasing power has already been diluted. This is a structural redistribution of risk from the institutional level to the retail level. Consider this: in 2008, through quantitative easing, the Fed expanded its balance sheet by trillions of dollars to absorb toxic mortgage-backed securities. The structural consequence was a massive repricing of global assets. While the too-big-to-fail institutions were recapitalized, the long-term cost was a permanent shift in the debt-to-GDP ratio. The result, a structural reliance on zero-interest rate policy that persisted for more than a decade. The recapitalization of the institution, the dilution of the individual. The incentive for the central banker is not to fix the economy, but to ensure market functioning. In private meetings, the discussion centers on debt rollover. If interest rates rise too quickly, the cost of servicing sovereign debt becomes unsustainable, leading to a fiscal crisis. Therefore, the Fed is structurally incentivized to keep real rates low or negative, effectively using inflation to devalue the debt, at the expense of those holding cash or fixed-income assets. The financial consequence is clear. The system is designed to reward debt and punish thrift. Actors within it, from corporate CEOs to treasury secretaries, behave rationally according to these incentives. In a world of constant dilution, the only way to maintain wealth is through asset inflation and leverage, further entrenching the wealth gap and eroding the middle class's path to financial sovereignty. The pattern of institutional opacity and monetary expansion is not a modern invention. It is a recurring cycle in the history of fiat systems. Look at the pattern. In the early 18th century, John Law convinced the French Regency that paper notes backed by shares in colonial trade could replace gold. In private, the Regency expanded the supply of notes to pay off royal debts, leading to a temporary boom, followed by a total collapse of the currency's purchasing power. A more direct parallel is found in the events leading up to 1971. Under Nixon and Treasury Secretary John Connally, the United States faced a structural drain on its gold reserves. In private, the administration realized that the Bretton Woods system, which pegged the dollar to gold, was preventing the monetary expansion needed to fund both domestic programs and military expenditures. The Nixon Shock of August 1971 was the ultimate revelation. By unilaterally closing the gold window, the U.S. moved the world into a pure fiat standard. The structural implication was that money was no longer a neutral store of value, it became a political tool of the state. This transition allowed for the unchecked expansion of the balance sheet that we see today, mirroring the historical behavior of every sovereign that has ever decoupled its currency from a hard physical constraint. Today, the parallel is found in the shift toward CBDCs and the war on cash. Just as John Law sought to force citizens into his paper system to manage state debt, modern central banks are designing programmable money to ensure that liquidity can be directed, restricted, or taxed in real time. The history of central banking is a sequence of moving the goalposts to accommodate the expanding needs of the debt architecture. When the monetary architecture changes, the first measurable impact is the erosion of time preference. In a stable system, individuals are incentivized to save and invest for the long term. In a system characterized by constant liquidity injections, individuals are forced into high time preference behavior. You spend today because the currency will buy less tomorrow. This erodes the social fabric. Stewardship and long-term planning are replaced by speculation and immediate consumption. The second observable pattern is the liquidity trap of the modern debt rollover. Interest payments on the national debt are beginning to eclipse major portions of the federal budget. The structural response is yield curve control, either explicit or implicit. The central bank must intervene to keep borrowing costs lower than the rate of inflation. This process is known as financial repression. The mechanism is invisible to most, but the consequence is not. To seek a real yield, capital is forced out of safe savings and into the risk curve. This inflates bubbles in real estate, equities, and high-yield debt. The rational actor realizes that saving in a fiat currency is a guaranteed loss. Capital gravitates toward assets outside the direct control of the central bank's balance sheet expansion. The implication for the sovereign individual is the necessity of adopting neutral infrastructure. If the system is designed to dilute, you must position yourself in assets with a fixed supply and zero counterparty risk. This is where Bitcoin shifts from a speculative asset to a structural necessity. It provides a mathematical floor in a world of discretionary ceilings. By opting into a transparent, programmatic ledger, you are not rebelling. You are simply refusing to participate in a structure that requires your dilution to survive. Understanding the structure of the Federal Reserve and its private deliberations removes the emotional weight of financial news. You stop looking for heroes to save the economy. You start recognizing the machine for what it is. The system is not broken. It is functioning exactly as it was designed, to manage the slow, orderly devaluation of debt at the scale of a global civilization. Strategic awareness means shifting from a state of reaction to a state of positioning. You do not need to wait for a public reveal or a black swan event. The evidence is in the history, the incentives, and the mathematical reality of the balance sheet. The pressure on the purchasing power of your labor is constant, and it is structural. When you stop viewing the Fed as a neutral protector and start seeing it as the lead architect of a debt-based grid, your path to sovereignty becomes clear. You manage your liquidity, you minimize your exposure to the dilution filter, you build your own financial structure on harder ground. You take responsibility for your capital because you realize the institution won't. The architecture was never designed with your preservation in mind. The incentives confirm it, the history confirms it, the mathematics confirm it. What remains is not a question of ideology, it is a question of structure. Where is your capital positioned when the dilution filter tightens? Sovereignty is not a political position, it is an engineering decision. This is 21 Protocol. Freedom is not a feeling, it is a structure. If you don't build yours, they will build over you.